As the storm raged outside, Jessica huddled in front of the fireplace, her hands wrapped around a mug of steaming tea. The crackling of the fire was the only sound in the old cabin, creating a sense of isolation that matched the turmoil in her heart. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stared into the flames, the memories of that fateful night flooding back with painful clarity. She could still hear the screech of tires, the shattering of glass, and the screams that echoed in the darkness. The image of her husband's lifeless body being pulled from the wreckage haunted her every moment, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. But amidst the grief and despair, a flicker of determination ignited within her. She couldn't let herself be consumed by sorrow, couldn't let the darkness of that night overshadow the bright future they had dreamed of together. Slowly, she rose to her feet, wiping away her tears as she made a silent vow to honor his memory in the most profound way possible. With a resolute expression, Jessica crossed the room to the writing desk in the corner, where a stack of papers and a pen lay waiting. She took a deep breath, then began to write, pouring her heart out onto the pages, recounting their love story, the moments they had shared, and the dreams they had dared to chase. Hours passed as the words flowed from her pen, a cathartic release of emotions she had suppressed for so long. And as the last sentence took shape on the final page, a sense of peace settled over her, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She read over the pages, feeling a mix of sadness and gratitude for the love they had shared. But there was one more step left to take, one more chapter to write in their story. With a determined gaze, Jessica folded the letter, tucking it into an envelope before sealing it with a kiss. As the storm outside began to subside, Jessica made her way to the door, clutching the letter tightly in her hand. She stepped out into the cool night air, her heart beating with a fierce resolve. It was time to let go of the past and embrace the future, to find a way to honor the love that had once filled her world. And as she set out into the unknown, a single star twinkled in the sky above, a sign that a new chapter was about to begin. Elena's heart raced as she stood before the old, decrepit house at the edge of town. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers of the past that sent shivers down her spine. She took a deep breath and pushed open the creaking gate, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a sword. As she stepped into the overgrown yard, memories flooded back to her, memories of laughter and love, but also of loss and pain. The house had been abandoned for years, a relic of a time long forgotten. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that there was something here waiting for her, something she needed to uncover. Her footsteps echoed through the empty hallways as she made her way through the house, the floorboards groaning under her weight. The air was thick with dust and decay, but she pressed on, guided by a force she couldn't explain. As she entered the old study, a beam of moonlight illuminated a desk covered with papers. Amongst them, she found a worn journal, its pages yellowed with age. With trembling hands, she opened it and began to read the words written by a hand long gone. The journal spoke of a forbidden love, a love that had torn a family apart and led to a curse that still haunted the house to this day. Elena's breath caught in her throat as she read on, her heart aching for the tragic souls who had once inhabited these walls. But as she reached the final entry, a chill ran down her spine. The words on the page seemed to shimmer and shift, revealing a hidden message that had been waiting for her all along. It was a warning that the curse could only be broken by one who was willing to sacrifice everything for love. Elena's hands shook as she realized the truth of her purpose here. She had been drawn to this place not by chance, but by fate. The curse could only be broken by her, by a love that was pure and unwavering. With tears in her eyes, she made her decision. She would stay in the house, facing the darkness that lurked within, all in the name of love. And as she whispered the words that would break the curse once and for all, a brilliant light filled the room, banishing the shadows and setting the spirits free. Elena stepped out into the dawn, her heart light and free. The house stood silent behind her, empty of the darkness that had plagued it for so long. And as she walked away, she knew that she had found her purpose, her destiny fulfilled at last. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the horizon, Sarah stood at the edge of the cliff, feeling the salty breeze whip through her hair. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. She could still hear the echo of Mark's words ringing in her ears. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. It's over." The pain of those words cut through her like a knife, leaving behind a raw, gaping wound in her chest. Tears welled up in her eyes as she replayed the memories of their time together. The laughter, the shared dreams, the whispered promises of forever. How could it all have unraveled so quickly? But as the tears fell, something inside Sarah shifted. She felt a simmering anger rising within her, replacing the sadness with a fierce determination. She refused to let this heartbreak define her. It was time to take control of her own story. With a steely resolve, Sarah opened her eyes and wiped away her tears. She took a step back from the edge of the cliff and turned away from the setting sun. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to face it head-on. As she made her way back to her car, the sky above her darkened, the first twinkling stars appearing like beacons in the night. Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of hope stirring within her. Maybe this ending was just the beginning of something new and exciting. A chance to rediscover herself, to chase her own dreams, and to find a love that would never falter. Sarah got into her car, the engine purring to life as she drove away from the cliff, leaving behind the shattered pieces of her heart. The road ahead stretched out before her, full of twists and turns, but she was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As she drove into the night, a single thought echoed in her mind. She was a survivor, a warrior, and nothing would stand in her way. The stars above seemed to wink approvingly, as if offering their silent support to this brave new chapter in Sarah's story. As she stepped out into the stormy night, the rain fell in sheets, drenching her to the bone. Lightning split the sky, revealing the figure that stood waiting for her by the edge of the cliff. It was him, the man she had been waiting for. His face was etched with sorrow and regret, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, as he took a step towards her. "You came," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the raging storm. "I thought you wouldn't." She wanted to scream at him, to unleash the fury and pain that had been building inside her for so long. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something she thought had long been extinguished: love. Despite the hurt, the betrayal, she couldn't deny the pull he still had on her heart. Tears mingled with the rain on her cheeks as she whispered, "Why did you do it? Why did you leave me?" He reached out a trembling hand, hesitating before gently touching her face. "I was a fool. I thought I was protecting you, but all I did was break us apart." The wind howled around them, a symphony of chaos and longing that echoed the turmoil in their hearts. She felt herself crumbling, the walls she had built so carefully around her beginning to crack. "I can't do this," she sobbed, her resolve faltering. "I can't pretend that everything is okay when it's not." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest as if trying to shield her from the storm. "I know I don't deserve it, but please, give me a chance to make it right, to show you how much I still love you." She closed her eyes, letting herself be enveloped in his embrace, feeling the warmth of his love seep into her soul once more. In that moment, the storm around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them standing on the edge of the cliff, facing the tumultuous sea below. As the rain continued to fall, she made a choice: to forgive, to trust, to love once more, and together they stood against the raging storm, determined to weather it as one. As the rain poured down outside, Sarah stood in the empty living room, her heart heavy with regret and longing. She replayed the argument with her sister in her mind, the harsh words exchanged still echoing in her ears. How could things have escalated so quickly? Tears streamed down her face as she thought about all the years of laughter and shared memories that now seemed to be crumbling away. Sarah felt a wave of loneliness wash over her, a deep ache in her chest that made it hard to breathe. She wandered aimlessly through the house, her footsteps muffled by the storm raging outside. As she passed by a shelf, a framed photo caught her eye, a picture of her and her sister as children, smiling brightly at the camera. Sarah reached out a trembling hand to touch the glass, feeling a surge of emotions well up inside her. The memories came flooding back, the late-night conversations, the inside jokes, the unwavering support they had always provided each other. How could she let all of that slip away over something so trivial? With a newfound determination, Sarah wiped away her tears and reached for her phone. She dialed her sister's number, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for a response. "Hello?" Her sister's voice sounded tired and distant. "Sis, it's me," Sarah began, her voice shaky but filled with sincerity. "I'm sorry for what happened earlier. I miss you. Can we talk?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, the only sound the steady beat of the rain against the windows. Finally, her sister spoke, her voice soft and vulnerable. "I miss you too, Sarah. I'm sorry too. Let's talk." And just like that, the heavy weight that had been pressing on Sarah's heart lifted, replaced by a glimmer of hope. Through the storm and the tears, a flicker of light had emerged, a chance for reconciliation and healing. As the rain poured down in relentless sheets, Sarah stood in front of the decaying mansion that once held so many memories. Flashbacks of family dinners, laughter, and love flooded her mind, contrasting sharply with the dark and desolate present. She took a deep breath, steeling herself to cross the threshold and face the ghosts of her past. With each step inside, the air grew heavy with the weight of nostalgia and regret. The creaking floorboards echoed through the empty corridors, adding an eerie soundtrack to her journey. The dust-covered furniture stood frozen in time, a silent witness to the passage of years. Sarah couldn't help but reach out a hand to brush her fingers over the forgotten picture frames, the faces within them long faded and blurred. As she ascended the grand staircase, memories came flooding back with a force that threatened to overwhelm her. The fight with her mother on the landing, the whispered secrets shared with her sister under the moonlight, the tender moments stolen with her first love in the shadows. Each room held a piece of her heart, a fragment of the life she had once known. But it was the room at the end of the hallway that held the true heartache. The door stood slightly ajar, a silent invitation to revisit the scene of her deepest sorrow. With trembling hands, Sarah pushed it open and stepped inside, the room bathed in a faint light that filtered through cracked windows. And there he was, sitting in the same old armchair, a ghost from her past made flesh. His eyes held a mixture of pain and longing as they met hers, and Sarah felt the dam inside her break. Tears streamed down her face as she crossed the room in a daze, sinking to her knees before him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words a prayer and a plea. "I'm so sorry for what happened, for what I did." He reached out a hand to gently cup her cheek, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. "There's nothing to be sorry for, Sarah," he murmured, his voice a balm to her soul. "We both made mistakes, but we can't change the past. All we can do is learn from it and choose a different path going forward." And in that moment, as the rain continued to beat against the windows and the world outside faded into oblivion, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope stir within her battered heart. The past may have been written in pain and regret, but the future lay open before her, a blank canvas waiting to be painted with a new beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the rolling hills, Sarah stood at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the vast expanse of the ocean. Her heart was heavy with the weight of her secrets, the burden of her past threatening to consume her. Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought about all she had lost, her family, her friends, her sense of self. The sky above her darkened, mirroring the storm raging within her soul. But just as she was about to surrender to the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole, a voice called out to her from behind. "Sarah," the voice said, soft and gentle. She turned around to see a figure emerging from the shadows, their face obscured by the fading light. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure stepped forward, the light catching their face just enough for Sarah to see the familiar twinkle in their eyes. It was John, her childhood best friend, the one person who had always seen her for who she truly was. "John, what are you doing here?" Sarah asked, disbelief coloring her words. "I've been looking for you, Sarah," John said, his voice filled with emotion. "I know you're hurting, but you don't have to face this alone." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she collapsed into John's arms, the weight of her pain finally too much to bear. In that moment, she felt a glimmer of hope, a flicker of light in the darkness that surrounded her. Together, they stood on the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping through their hair, the ocean roaring below. And in that moment, Sarah knew that no matter what the future held, she had someone by her side to face it with. Ava stood frozen, her heart pounding so loud she was sure her captors could hear it. The flickering torches illuminated the dark cavern, casting eerie shadows across the stone walls. She could see the glint of weapons in their hands, ready to strike at a moment's notice. "Where is the amulet?" the leader growled, his voice sending a shiver down her spine. Ava knew she couldn't reveal its location, not if she wanted to protect her people from the ancient curse that threatened to destroy everything she held dear. "I'll never tell you," she responded, her voice filled with determination. The leader's expression darkened, and he gestured to one of his men, who lunged forward with a menacing glare. Ava closed her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable pain. But just as the blade was about to strike, a deafening roar echoed through the cavern. The ground shook violently, causing the torches to sputter and flicker out. In the chaos, Ava felt strong hands grab her and pull her away from the danger. "Come with me if you want to live," a voice whispered urgently in her ear. Ava opened her eyes to see a figure shrouded in darkness, their features obscured. Without hesitation, she took the stranger's hand and followed as they navigated through the labyrinth of tunnels, the sounds of battle fading into the distance. Finally, they emerged into the cool night air, the moon casting a soft glow over the landscape. Ava turned to thank her savior, but before she could speak, the figure pushed back their hood to reveal a face she never expected to see. "Marcus?" she gasped, disbelief washing over her. The man before her was none other than her childhood friend, who had disappeared without a trace years ago. But there was something different about him now, a steely determination in his eyes that sent a chill down her spine. "We don't have much time," Marcus said, his voice urgent. "The amulet must be destroyed before it's too late." Ava nodded, her mind racing with questions. How did Marcus know about the amulet, and why had he come back now, after all this time? But there was no time for answers, only action. Together they set off into the night, determined to end the curse that had haunted their land for centuries. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the deserted street, Emily felt her heart race with anticipation. She had been preparing for this moment for months, meticulously planning every detail to ensure her safety and the success of her mission. With a deep breath, she slowly approached the abandoned warehouse where the notorious arms dealer Victor was rumored to be hiding. The air was thick with tension as she crept closer, her senses on high alert. As she reached the entrance, she could hear the faint sound of voices coming from inside. She pressed her back against the wall, listening carefully. With a sudden jolt of recognition, she realized one of the voices belonged to her long-lost brother, Alex. Confusion and shock washed over her as she struggled to make sense of the situation. Why was Alex with Victor? And what had led him down this dark path? Without hesitating, she silently slipped inside the warehouse, her heart pounding in her chest. The scene before her was even more unsettling than she had imagined. Alex stood next to Victor, a look of determination etched on his face. Before she could process the situation further, Victor's men surrounded her, their guns aimed at her head. Panic surged through her veins, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. "You shouldn't have come here, Emily," Victor sneered, his cold eyes boring into hers. "You've made a grave mistake." Ignoring his words, Emily locked eyes with Alex, silently pleading for him to see reason and stand by her side. But his expression remained stoic, his loyalty seemingly unwavering. In a split-second decision, Emily knew she had to act fast. With lightning speed, she disarmed one of Victor's men and fired off a shot into the air, causing chaos to erupt in the warehouse. Amidst the chaos and confusion, Emily's focus remained on Alex. She made a split-second decision and lunged towards him, knocking him to the ground and shielding him from the crossfire. "Run, Alex, run!" she shouted, her voice filled with urgency and love. As the warehouse erupted into a frenzy of violence, Emily and Alex made a break for the exit, their bond stronger than ever in the face of adversity. Unknown to them, this daring escape would set into motion a chain of events that would forever change the course of their lives. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she read the note left on the kitchen counter. The words seemed to leap out at her, tearing through her heart. I can't do this anymore. I need to find myself. I'm sorry. The weight of his absence settled heavily upon her shoulders as she reread the note, searching for any hidden message or clue. For weeks, she tried to make sense of it all, the days stretching endlessly as she replayed memories in her mind, searching for some sign that could have warned her of his departure. The pain of his absence lingered in every corner of their once happy home, the silence deafening. One evening, as she sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, a knock at the door startled her. With a quickening of her heart, she rose to answer it, her breath catching in her throat as she saw him standing on the other side. His eyes, once filled with uncertainty and restlessness, now held a glimmer of hope and determination. Without a word, he held out his hand, a silent invitation for her to join him on the unknown journey he had embarked upon. She hesitated, her heart torn between the pain of his leaving and the longing to hold on to what they once had. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw a truth she had missed before, the courage to seek what truly set his soul on fire, even if it meant leaving behind everything he had known. With a deep breath, she reached out, her hand slipping into his, the warmth of his touch igniting a spark within her. As they stood there, facing the uncertainty of their future together, she knew that this moment would change everything. And so, hand in hand, they stepped into the world beyond their comfortable walls, leaving behind the past and embracing the unknown with open hearts. For in the ashes of what was lost, a new beginning flickered to life, fueled by the unbreakable bond that held them together. And as they walked into the sunset, their intertwined fingers spoke of a love, strong enough to weather any storm that may come their way.